Good morning and welcome. Thank you for being here on a Sunday morning, bright and early. My name is Laura Gragg. I'm head of program at the Creative Connection. And I'm here with my three fellow panelists, participants, and what we called applicant producers for the Creative Connection. And they are Leontine Petit from Lemming Film in the Netherlands, Carole Scotta from Hauecourt in France, and Gerhard Meixner from Razor Film in Germany. So welcome, and thank you for a most exciting year, speaking for myself. I want to quickly introduce and thank our partners from this year, and obviously most specifically the EU, whose initiative this was, and who largely fund the program. And particularly actually the team who served us as advisors and counsel throughout, who are Sarah Brunet, Maria Silvia Gatta, and Claire Vazas, who are always quite helpful whenever we had questions. On workshop 2, we worked with Le Groupe Ouest, who are based in Brittany and France, and they led the content for workshop 2, so thank you to them. And local partners for workshop 2, who are the SAE Institute for Creative Media Education in Athens, the Thessaloniki Film Festival, as well as the Greek Film Center. And for workshop 3, a very warm-hearted thanks to the MBB, the Median Board Berlin-Brandenburg, for their support. Because it took place in Bad Zaro in the Berlin-Brandenburg region. So sorry, I have to click at the same time. Let me click, bam. Let's take a look, well, before we look to the participants, look at the map slide. And I thought that for those of you who don't know the background, we might give you a bit of a refresher about who the creatives are and why this alliance was created. So maybe, Carole, if you'd like to say a few words about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, briefly, because it's not about the creatives and it's about the creative connection, but the idea came from this group of producers who decided to gather and to create a collective intelligence, cooperation, in order to have more leverage on the growing, the market, which is more and more concentrated. So we like to call it horizontal concentration, which means that it's 10 companies meeting every Monday and having like 3 or 4 quite intense weekends in the year where we share projects, share ideas, stroke a deal to finance some of our developments on the TV slate with Fremantle, and decided to apply to this call from the EU because we value, what we value the most is really the talent, the creatives, and we want to create a safe place for the writers who are working in Europe on international series. So what we wanted to do was to really find a way to have more connections with those writers, and they would feel safe on return to be able to work freely and develop projects with the group. So this was the main idea.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And luckily, happenstance made it that Lemming Film came across this call that very much echoed your own ethos in the creatives, really. So, and this was launched, you want to talk, because we launched this, last year? But this was even before I came on board. So.
Yeah, no, we saw the announcement of the call, and we felt as a group that there are very few workshops for writers that is not about projects. So we wanted to create a workshop or a set of workshops where we give the writers the opportunity to think about what is it that they want to write about. So instead of immediately going into a workshop with a fixed idea, to say, okay, let's go to the start, let's go to the seeds and the inspiration. What is it that we want to talk about when we want to tell stories to the world, but also stories about Europe, stories that reflect all the challenge that we have, both in Europe and the rest of the world, and not immediately get into like this synopsis treatment script and then go to the market kind of thing. So it was a lot about this that we felt that was needed, and that's how we applied also. That was our main goal.
Great, thank you.
Time for thinking, creating, reflection.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I was saying 3 applicant producers, these are the 10 companies of the creatives, and the EU was encouraging a group application. So these are the 3 producers who stepped forward. And among them, Gerhard, you have your own experience training young producers, if you want to just say a couple of words, because I think it was a big help to have as a lead, as one of the lead companies, to have someone who is also involved in workshops and training. So,
well, my business partner Roman and I were heading a program called Atelier Ludwigsburg Paris, which is a producer's training, 1-year training for young professionals who want to work internationally, who want to co-produce internationally. It's based in Ludwigsburg at the Film Academy, and it's based at La Fémis in Paris, and it's about 18 young people who travel a lot, who learn how to develop a project from scratch until it gets on the market. So they get a training of all that is important to co-produce internationally. And this program, there are some similarities actually, but this program is funded by the media program of the European Union. And that's why we have some kind of experience how to administer such a funding, which can be complex, but is of course an amazing support for training. The similarity of this program is that our participants in the beginning start to develop a short film project together with the script writing students of the Film Academy in Baden-Württemberg and La Fémis in Paris, which they develop over this year, and at the end of the year they produce this short film that is co-financed by Arte and SWR. So they learn how to cooperate with writers, how to talk to writers, how to get to an idea from based on a theme that we give them in the beginning of the year. So there is a similarity to the creative connection where writers come together with producers and invent something new and don't come to this program with a project in mind already.
yeah, absolutely. The idea of co-conceiving something and not coming with a project was quite innovative, and we realized that there weren't many programs, or if any, out there that were working with writers in that capacity. Just as also as a continued introduction, and then we'll go into the content of the workshops. But this was an exploratory and continues to be an exploratory sessions. There's 3 of them, so we continue this exploration, and I think it's in a way it's a form of research. But again, as Gerhard was saying, there is also the end goal of co-conceiving together, collaboratively, series ideas and concepts, and even going into maybe an initial phase of development. But we did not know ahead of time, whether or not that would pan out. So this is an interesting moment for us, because a year ago we were sitting on this stage with some pretty abstract ideas about how it would be wonderful if writers and producers could unite and be inspired together over a series of workshops and produce something together to strengthen those ties and to learn more about each other. And so here we are with the lived experience of the 3 workshops behind us. So there's a sense of accomplishment, I think, to a certain degree. I'm going to go back to the participants list and maybe ask, I'm going to stop yammering and let you all maybe walk us through the workshops. And Leontine, you can look at it there if you want. But this is workshop 1, so back, I guess you saw, these are the participants. It was a big group. All of this is available on our website anyway. But okay, so workshop 1. there's a picture of people getting inspired and a picture of people. It's a beautiful day, but it was incredibly cold. We were with our environmental specialist that afternoon, and there we go. Here, take it away, Leontine.
Okay, so how often do you get in your life, your working life again, the time to really reflect and have a whole week with a lot of inspirational speakers? I think at least I very, very little, and I think even also the writers don't give themselves this kind of time to really, go back to inspiration, feeding themselves with all kind of ideas about. And so what we did is that we tried to invite a group of experts, speakers. So there were philosophers, sociologists, environmental activists in a way, or
Absolutely.
people talking about AI. So basically we try to talk about a lot of subjects that are very important in nowadays life, and then go a little bit more into depth about these themes, and have also talks about what could be the connection between their field of expertise and writing stories about the themes that are important in Europe at the moment. I think for all of us it was very inspirational. Some of us had more, knew more about certain topics. Others had no idea. We felt, exactly. We felt inspired. We had time to think. We had time to share. We had heated discussions about certain topics, especially about ecological topics and climate. But it was also, for example, very interesting, different way of storytelling. Like there was Masamba from Africa. There was more like about oral storytelling instead of written storytelling. It was, of course, about identity. So
that got heated as well, because people get emotional when it becomes personal, and that was really, it was very beneficial, I think, to have those discussions, because that's how you can move forward.
Yeah, and so from there on, I think people were just thinking more about what is it that I want to write about, and how can I, with my writing, make a bridge between certain topics that are important for me and a narrative story, without being, of course, educational about certain topics.
Yeah, absolutely. Great.
Like we could have listened for another, I don't know how many weeks, just about like these experts in their fields and what they were like researching and teaching as well at universities. It was super interesting and very inspiring.
Yeah.
So great.
Makes you want to go back to school and take a bunch of classes. And then so workshop 2 was very different. It was interesting to work with Le Groupe Ouest, because they have a specific way of working with writers, and they did a wonderful job adjusting to our very unusual group, which were both producers and writers, and who were working. So this was. It looks very playful. It was some of the time. I keep looking up there where actually it's right in front of me. So this is workshop 2, where you were all paired up into groups. Is that right, Gerhard? Do you want to tell us a little bit? And
Yes.
this crazy schedule, which is going to mean nothing to anyone, but it's something to.
The second workshop, we were put in cells, we called it, of 2 or 3 people, 1 or 2 writers and 1 producer, and Le Groupe Ouest, Antoine and his tutors had all kind of things, techniques prepared that they wanted to share with us. So the first task that we had to do, we got a Polaroid camera, and in these cells we were sent into the city of Athens and to take pictures of what we thought was interesting and inspiring, and then we came back after a couple of hours. We put these pictures on a table and used them later on again. So to come to a spark of an idea that we thought could be interesting to further develop. And there were other sessions that we had of, like, for example, when we developed an idea or a spark of an idea of a story, one of the cell was a character of this idea, and we had a session with a therapist, how do you say, psychological therapist.
Yeah, I was a psychoanalyst,
so
I guess.
we were laying on the couch, and we were in the character of this, or in this character, and answered a lot of questions about ourselves, like who we are, what we feel, what ideas we have, what fears we have, just to get deeper into this character and use it later on to develop a map on a whiteboard of a story. So it was like, I don't know, these were just two examples, but there was a lot more. We had a session with tarot cards.
Maybe it's good to say that it was really led by Le Groupe Ouest,
Yes.
and their idea is really to come up with a project, but without words, without using words. So it's really about pictures,
Yeah.
a combination of concepts, many things, and trying to, and this is really what they do also in Brittany, is really to go on your computer as late as possible, because once you start writing, you already are fixed into your process of
narration.
creative.
Yes.
So this idea was really to we spent like 5 days, right? Trying to really, really work around things that we don't usually do. I mean, usually we just write. So it was very unusual and very
Playful.
interesting and playful as well.
Playful, yeah.
And a good way also to get to know each other, which was also part of the concept, is to create long-term relationship with writers.
And it's a concept of Le Groupe Ouest that is called
Pre-writing.
pre-writing workshop. So that's exactly what you say. Before you sit down and type into a computer, it's more about like building up something on a board with pictures, with slogans, with gimmicks, everything. It's very playful, and very, very nice.
It's also a lot about, I mean, it's about how to make the quality of the writing better. I mean, it can be very goal-driven. You know, you immediately have to go to goal-driven, result-driven. And so what we try to do is, because I can imagine it sounds sometimes a little bit vague, but I think what we try to do to go back to the process and go away from this, the result is all what it's about. It's to find ways to open. I mean, I have been involved in the past also, and sometimes in, projects with art schools, and I think a lot of art schools are much more about, let's first encourage the process and then see what the result could be. And I think sometimes we miss this kind of thing in what we do within the drama series world or the feature film world. So it's a little bit going back to this idea and then see if we can improve the results.
Yeah. It's like you have to make time for it, otherwise the time just won't be found sometimes. So then we left workshop 2. This was in early spring, and we went to workshop 3, which was in Berlin-Brandenburg. We were not having fun on a boat the entire time, but that was a nice little afternoon that we had. And so this was more about, Carole, if you want to tell us a bit about it. This was the groups, some groups were formed, and then you took things forward a bit, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, basically the idea was to really come deeper into the writing of a project. So it was a combination of cells that would really focus on what they were willing to write on, and also moments where we would have time to meet other writers who we didn't meet in the previous weeks. And I have to say, actually, arriving there was really seeing a family. I mean, it was really, it's as you said, it's very rare to spend 3 weeks of your time within a time frame of less than 6 months, and to get to spend so much time with people. So I think we really succeeded already as soon as we arrived to really value those relationships with the writers. And then we had, so as you can see, the schedule of a combination of open discussions with writers and focusing on the projects. And for example, on my side, I was working with Thomas and Tufik, two writers who were here, on projects actually inspired by an expert on week first. So it was really, I mean, a kind of arc which led into a very natural project, which actually we are working on right now. So I think it's really a very good example of how an expert could create an inspiration. We worked on it. I mean, we didn't really work on it on week 2 because it was more like starting from different ideas. But then, with what we learned on week 2, going back to that on week 3 and working on it. So, and the combination of those two writers, a French one and a Israeli Palestinian one, they didn't know each other, and they knew each other's work, and they really were inspired by working together. So it's really, I mean, something that wouldn't have happened if we were in our office and thinking, okay, we would like to develop this project. What writer could we work with? Which combination? I mean, this was really organic and really worked well. So, and there were many other cells that led into a project. So it was, you know, and as Laura said, we didn't know from the start if this would succeed. And basically, and just on my, also because we all want to share personal things, but there was another writer that, Susie, his name's Susie, and we are working now with her on another project, which has nothing to do with the cells or with the, but just because of the open discussions we had in this week, we felt, we have a connection, and we could, so it's, you know, it was very inspiring.
Yeah. I wanted to add that at the end of the second workshop, all of these cells had some kind of story developed, and another cell pitched the project of another cell to the whole group, and which was actually super interesting as well. I like, how do other groups see the project that you developed in your cell? And these projects then moved into the third workshop. So we continued to work on what we did in the second, even though it was a very creative, inspiring, and playful time that we had with Group West as well. So but there was an outcome in the end that we used in the third workshop to continue to work on. Yeah.
That's always the tricky jump, actually, is to go from these ideas bouncing around to say, okay, well, how are we going to... so there was adjustments made from workshop to say, well, can we try to kind of shape this into an end goal? And you can't really force things. I think that's what we... you can guide them, but you can't really force them. I was thinking now is a good time to hear from the writers, and it was very difficult to get them here with us in person. So we have a video to show you. Before we cue that, I wanted to read to you, these are the questions they were answering in their interviews. So basically it was why they decided to join or apply to the Creative Connection. What were their learnings? What did they learn? What activities were the most stimulating to them? And also what connections that they've made, not only obviously with the producers, but with other writers, because I think that some of the writers you mentioned are in touch with each other and want to work on projects like Tunde and Susie, Cecilia and Mustafa, and so they all created their own little connections to bring each other onto their own work. So that's really that was really fruitful. So yeah, if we could cue the video, please. Thank you.
So at some point, Gerhard Meixner from Razor Film came up to me, and he asked me if I wanted to take part in a weird kind of program that, and he said to me, so the only idea is that we want to know what's going on, what are we doing here, what's a writer, what's a story, what's a series. And I thought that sounded interesting. That sounds like the German word Grundlagenforschung that comes normally from natural sciences, Grundlagenforschung. And this is like stuff you do and you don't know what's coming out. You know, it's just basic stuff. There might be a possibility for something amazing, and there might also be no possibility to use it for anything. And I thought, oh, this is something the whole European market in series and also in filmmaking really lacks, that at some point people ask themselves, what are we doing here?
David from Complexon told me about the program and asked if I would be interested in applying. And I like the sound of what he said, the way he described it, that it would be getting people together to try to connect creatively, which I definitely think is it's a specific and very existent challenge. And so it was a chance to meet people from all these different countries, all of us trying to work, all of us trying to figure out within this world where like streaming has changed so much, where the industry is evolving and people have all these questions about what does this mean for the future of the industry, to be able to take that time and get to know people from all these different countries and have those conversations. So yeah, it sounded potentially quite exciting.
A lot of my work so far has been international, so I was attracted to the producers involved and the list of names of producers involved, and thought that I might be a good fit for them.
The whole idea of this workshop was something I'd never heard about before, that you don't come to the workshop with your own project or something thought through, but rather you come there and then you see what happens. It's all about creating ideas and new concepts. So that fascinated me, at the same time as it was kind of sounded a little bit horrifying also, because it's so open.
So the first one, which was mainly consisting of different people holding lectures, and then us talking about these lectures and asking questions, and that was just really simple, a blast of knowledge for my brain. It was just great to hear people talk about climate change and about different ways how to tell a story, like really a lot of doors opening to different topics. And then in the second workshop, which was for me personally the most inspiring one, there was not only a few doors opening up, it was really like a totally new horizon for me. I really also learned a few very simple and concrete techniques how to invite this regularly, on a regular basis in my process, and I'm doing that since then. In the last workshop, I also learned how to really use the collective force of creativity for my own writing and to share stuff with others. So you would just give something in it, and you would receive something, and you could take that and do something else with it. So it was really like a very inspiring and nice game that we were all playing together.
I think my absolute favorite was the exercise where one of the Groupe l'Ouest people was kind of a psychotherapist to a character we had created. I kind of threaded that beforehand, because it sounded a lot like performing, which is not something I'm very comfortable with, but it turned out to be really, really useful and very safe experience also. So basically going to this room as a character, and then you are blindfolded, and the person, the facilitator, I don't know what you call them, starts asking questions from the character, and then you go along with it. And I was positively surprised about how useful it was, how much I got out of it, and how not scary it was, and definitely will be using that.
I thought I understood how the industry worked here in Europe, and I guess maybe in Germany. But I think I realized over the course of the 3 workshops that how much I misunderstood, and how much that there were differences that I didn't even know to look for, in terms of, I think specifically in terms of how people work with writers, how different people work with writers, how producers work with writers. It was also clear over the course of the workshops that the producers were also aware of like the changes and the potential, that this was a moment to try and redefine what some of those relationships could be like. And so I think we were all coming together to try and figure out how each other worked and what might be the best ways to work together moving forward.
You know, there's so many lovely things to say about this scheme as well. I mean, it really, for me, it was just so, it was such a gift, really. Writers are really introverted by nature, and I am, and we obviously have social skills and the ability to collaborate and work with other people. But when you're in that situation where you're giving up like 3 weeks of your time out of a 6-month period, I mean, it's a massive amount of time to spend around other people. For it to be so rewarding and productive, well, that was unexpected, and I'm very grateful, really.
Aw, thank you, Susie. So, can I show off my college German for a moment and say Grundlagenforschung? Can you translate that into? Is this to do with research or?
Yes, well, Jan explained it pretty well already. I think it's a term from science, and it means basic research, actually, which is the contrary of, I think, applied research, or how it is called. It's that you research something without knowing what will be the outcome. So it's not about a specific issue that you investigate in for a long period of time, and then you find something out that you use. No, it's very basic, and you check out something, and in the end you don't know, am I going to use it or not? And but then maybe a year later or sometime later it comes up again. It blows up and you think, but we found out this or that, and we can continue to research more specific on it. And that's in a way what we did in our workshop, that in the first workshop we had this basic information, very interesting, certain fields, yes, but it was not meant for us to use it specifically and write something about it. It was like feeding us on a very like in separate fields, but not specifically to make use of it directly.
Yeah.
So that's Grundlagenforschung. And,
thank you.
It's a very complicated term in German.
Yeah,
but
it's a mouthful.
It's a good comparison, I would say.
Yeah.
He's very right. Yeah.
And I think one of the points also, because obviously we're all results driven, so we'll extrapolate results from this first year, and there are some, but the idea that these seeds are planted and a year from now, I think some people will say, that reminds me of this. I mean, seeds have been planted for something, and writers know this, of course, that you're going to go back to an idea that you had 3 years before and start developing it because the time is right and I think that there's also that. There's, yes, we're goal-oriented in the sense that we want projects to come out of this, but that might also be happening, and these collaborations just for years to come as well. The one thing, and I think, and then we can maybe lead on to a conclusion, but I think there was an uncomfortable, moments of discomfort, particularly in the second and third workshop, were always coming back to project and not having something to base ourselves or our discussions on. Workshops are always project-based because you want them to be useful and concrete. And so I'm bringing you this project, I want everybody's feedback on it, and I want to take it a step further. And it was enriching not to work that way, but I was curious to just, from a producer's perspective, because I mean the writers, it's kind of obvious how they felt about it, because they were frustrated that they couldn't be concrete about a project that's already happening, but also really intrigued in terms of what was happening. But for you, what are the advantages or disadvantages of not having a project as a base for this program and these workshops?
Maybe I can add something. I don't know if we said enough, but it was a producer-writers workshop, which is really very rare, and I think what was very important, that we were all reacting to the same input at the same time without having the business relationship that we usually have with the writers. So we were really equal in front of experts, in front of games that would help us to create an idea. So I think this idea of being really human beings before being writers or producers was really important, and really helped also the writers to also understand and get to know more who we are as producers. Because even if they were, I mean, some of them say, oh, I mean, some of them were surprised that we were, you know,
Real people?
real people, exactly.
Nice people.
And nice people.
Yeah, I think it was without competition also. And some of them said, "Oh, I felt really inspired and relaxed and safe, and the creativity could really grow within me, because it was not about competition. It was not about, oh God, maybe I can sell my project. Maybe this producer likes my project a lot. Or it was far more about how to connect. And I remember myself being a young producer. When I was 30, that I did this EAVE course, which is now like one of the biggest courses for workshops for young producers to learn international producing. And there was a live before, I always say, and a live after, because it made such enormous impact on me as a young producer. And I think for some of these writers, and we have to also tell them, a lot of them were very experienced. I mean, we're talking about really the very good and very high established group of writers, but also some of them were less experienced. So we could also learn, everybody could learn from each other. They suddenly felt, hey, there is an opportunity to work within Europe with different kind of writers, with producers who could maybe give us more opportunities on different kind of projects. And that's also, so it's also building up a network. So whenever you now have a project, you can think immediately, oh, I can also call Susie in England, or I can work with Tunde in Denmark, or there's possibilities for me in Germany. It doesn't always, especially since nowadays the series world can also be written in many languages. It doesn't always have to be your local talent, but you can combine your local talent with other European talent.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and the goal also of this program is like to form a network of writers, of course, also with producers, but mainly also of writers that can connect with each other, that can share ideas, that can develop stories together, cross borders. After 3 weeks of intense collaboration and spending time together, you really get close. You don't have any problems reaching out to other people and helping each other, or as I said, collaborating. And what I think we want to is also after the next editions that there is a network built of these writers, more experienced, less experienced writers that see each other, that share information, that they collaborate, they stand by themselves in a way as well. That's something we have at the Atelier Ludwigsburg Paris as well. We have more than 300 former participants, and they form a super active, important network and help each other in all kind of ways. And that is something that I think we need here in Europe as well among writers. Not everyone is sitting and on his desk and not reaching out to others and just seeing what is around him, but like making or having the opportunity to expand the perspectives and views and stories.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big benefits of the media program. Some of the programs that have been financed by Creative Media, like ACE and EAVE that you just met, it is a gift to professionals to be able to have these networks that they can plug into and find partners for their projects, and just be, have support each other. And that is something that's lacking for the writers and to create a space where they can access one another and exchange with one another and network, I think is going to be enriching for them as a European, network of talent. And it'll look different from what there is in North America. It's not agent-based. It's something where there's genuine exchange and possibility. I know that sounds ideal, but I believe it's true. In terms of concrete results, there are about there are 5 projects that are underway and that we're going to announce more next month. I believe towards the end of the program, which is in October. And there's a lot of future collaborations as well under discussion, in the sense that all of these writers are in touch with each other, and you guys are on the phones also saying, oh, read this, what do you think of this, blah, blah, blah. So that's all been very, very fruitful. We'd also like, there's the prospect of helping writers network with one another. There's also the prospect of being able to network and share with the other programs who've shared similar funding. So why not War Room content, for instance? It's led by David Doucet. That's also super interesting, and they've gotten funding for this year. And I think it's interesting for us to be able to exchange ideas and approaches, and have our participants be able to network with one another as well. And more than network, maybe share a session or something. So this is all being talked about. I don't know if we need to reclaim our ethos that as a conclusion that we had to strengthen the ties between creatives throughout Europe. This is something that I think we're very committed to, and that I think that we've done a pretty good job in our first edition of doing. Does anybody want to add anything as a conclusion?
I think we learned a lot as well,
Yeah.
like how fast you can come to an idea without having something in mind already, how quickly you can develop something, and how helpful it is if you can join such a program without being obliged to deliver something in the end. It makes it more easy, more comfortable, more free, more safe for the participants to think creatively, like to work creatively, without being forced to present something in the end that has to be made. I think that's a big problem, that when we get funding from somewhere, we think, okay, this program, this project has to be made in the end. But there is also always the chance that you can fail, and it should not be a problem.
On the other hand, I want to add that it's not that there was so much knowledge about the market in the group. So it's not that we don't think about the market. It's not that we say, okay, let's just do whatever we want and then see if anybody wants to have it. I think that there was often also, because a lot of people are working and producing and developing projects with the market in collaboration with public broadcasters, streamers, whatever. So we definitely always have that in mind, and I think it's also important. I mean, otherwise, then maybe it becomes too much a playground. But to find and to give ourselves that time, I think it's seriously necessary to make our quality better, because that's in the end what we want. We want to improve our storytelling, we want to improve our stories and to reach our audience in a good way.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you for your time, and thank you to the Venice Production Bridge for hosting us.
Thank you.
Does anybody have a question? That's a good question.
That is a good question. We have, we do have a website, and did we even bring it up? I don't know if we did, but we have. If you type the creativeconnection.net is our. That's our website, and we will have a watch this space, because we are applying for the second edition of funding and a second round of funding now, and hopefully, if all goes well, we'll be able to reach out to writers in the spring of 2024. So we've got 5 months before the next call. But that will be posted, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a question here.
Yeah.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. Question from an independent filmmaker who has the project, first draft, let's say, of a script that is going to happen in Italy, but also involves some people from tourists coming from abroad. So my question would be, is it also possible through your platform to find collaborators who would also be interested in participating in this kind of small international project? I mean, yeah.
Well, that's a good question. And actually that can be used for our site, is that you have the list of people and you can look at the different names of the CVs of the different participants, which are accessible online, and you can write to me, and we can take it from there.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm curious to know more about the process of selecting or inviting the writers. And also, Laura, what is your role exactly in this? If you know.
I'm a moderator. No.
Yeah, you're a moderator. But
I just
since
hang
you're-
out with these
No,
guys.
you've been involved in the process.
Yes.
So I'm curious to also learn that. if you-
Okay, so and the first question was, yes, for the selection, it's a bit like we mentioned ACE, and I mentioned ACE for reasons because I worked there in the early 2000s, and it's a reference that a lot of people know at this point. But in terms of the application process, some writers, in order to get a mix, which we're encouraged to do, of experienced writers and less experienced writers, there was a simultaneous invitation to some writers to apply, someone like Jan or Tunde, and then there was a call that was made through our site and through the press. So some people are invited to apply, and there's an open call as well.
And you think that there was, say, kind of equal visibility everywhere, or some territory?
No. No, it was done. I would like to spend more time on that process next time around, because it wasn't. You don't control. It wasn't as controlled as I would have liked in terms of the message could have been broader.
Did you
we were
go,
rushed for time.
Sorry, I don't want to have
That's
a
fine.
fourth-degree interrogation, but I was wondering, did you go through like local associations of
Absolutely.
talents?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That message was put out absolutely to the European Screen Alliance, the Screenwriters Alliances, and stuff like that. Of course, we did everything possible, but I would like just more time to set that up next time. But yeah, the message went out to all the screenwriting bodies.
And we had a lot of applications.
We did.
So many writers applied to
Yeah.
take part in these workshops.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely.
And the second question?
And the second question. So yes, as head of program, I was hired by, and what joy to have 10 bosses. It was a very collaborative launch, and it was very, very interesting. It was very enriching. It took up a lot of time and energy, I think, for everyone. Last spring, so spring of 22, spring and summer, to build this up from zero. So I was hired by them to put it together, basically, and to run after them for ideas and approvals when necessary. And that was less and less the case as the year went on, once we got it started and once we got to get to know each other. But yeah, I was just putting the workshops together with Leah, Miss Leah Jones, who's the creatives coordinator. And
how was it? Was it
Thomas Bourdin's based in France.
overwhelming, or?
Yeah, in the beginning. It was overwhelming in the beginning, but it was a big learning curve, which is why it's even more exciting to look forward to a second edition, because we know so much now. And yeah, so it's paying off in that sense, but it was a lot of work in the beginning, absolutely. And thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question on the eligibility.
is it only open to European writers? And also, I would like to know, if you select the writers, do you require that the writers also want to direct the film himself, or that it's more based on the adaptation from a book, or that he can work together with an US production that he just write? So there's a kind of co-production potentiality.
If there's a potential for co-production, that's always fine. But the writers, regardless, and I hope I'm answering this question correctly, but regardless of their nationalities, need to be European residents paying tax in Europe. So, and it's European funded, so they need to be European in that sense. That's in order to qualify for funding from the European Union. So if you were to have a non-European writer participating, then that cannot be funded with the funds of the European Union. So it's more, and it is very much about shaping Europe. If you have someone and European talent, if there's a non-European contributing to that, then that's just something that needs to be financed through through additional funding than that from the EU.
And I think, to be even more specific, Sarah is here. She's talking now. But I think the nationalities have to be in sync with the media territories, the countries that are part of the media program of the European Union.
Yeah, so you can go on the
some
EU
European
site,
countries don't count. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, it depends on the nature of the call, but you can see all that on the. For instance, Tunde is clearly, she's a Nigerian, but working as a writer in Germany and paying her tax in Germany as a German writer for German production companies. So.
And to answer the other question, it's not for directors. I mean, it's writers mostly, and writers can be directors, but it's mostly for writers.
Yeah, absolutely. There were some writer-directors, but it's writer-focused program.
And this program was also about drama series, not about feature films.
Yeah, there is a lot of bleeding over in Europe between the two, but this was very much series-focused. Yeah. Thank you for your questions.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day.
Thanks.